Hello and welcome to Dr. Viola Voila Voices, a podcast and YouTube series produced here at ICAM in Ipswich. Today, I have my special guest, George Grattan, the chair of Cape Ann Pride. George, would you like to introduce yourself, share your pronouns, and any pertinent details?
Thank you, Casey. Thanks so much for having me on today, and really having all of us at Cape Ann Pride on. So again, my name is George, and I use he, him pronouns. I identify as bisexual and queer, and I can explain why I use both terms at some point if you're interested.
You do it now.
Well, so let me just say I arrived in Gloucester about 4 years ago with my wife, Mary, and we kind of found ourselves getting involved in what ended up becoming Cape Ann Pride, and we're bringing back the second ever Cape Ann Pride weekend again this year, last week in May, so starting on the Thursday night after Memorial Day, which is May 29th. We have events Thursday to Sunday, capping off with our big Pride on the Pier tea dance at Maritime Gloucester on Sunday, June 1st from 2 to 7. And details for everything I'm going to talk about today
Will be put here.
They are on capeannpride.org. So, but yeah, I use bisexual because that is my sexual orientation. Which for me just means I have the capacity to be romantically, sexually, affectionately attracted to people of more than one gender. And as the great Robin Oakes, bisexual activist and educator, always says, you know, not always at the same time, not always to the same degree, not always in the same way. And that's true for both me and my wife. But I also add queer to that because that for me is a more encompassing term of lots of different sexual orientation and gender identities, and I like to think of those things in human beings as not necessarily being fixed and permanent in some sense. I think that there is fluidity and flexibility and growth and self-discovery in all of us, so I like to honor that by adding queer, because what do I know? I might discover about myself at some point in the future. And also, right now, sort of more importantly, I use it in a political sense, because I think taking that term, of course, it was reclaimed largely from being a slur. I know that for some older generations, it still has that harmful effect, which I try to be respectful of. So I never call people what they ask not to be called. But for me, it really works to sort of signal that as the saying goes, I'm here and I'm queer and get used to it, right? There's a political edge to it that just bisexual doesn't often have.
Do you find that, I love that you're such a proud bee, because we don't see it very often in the community. So I think it's important that you're standing up there saying, I'm the bee in Pichipichiqua.
We are. I mean, the irony is that every survey that's ever been done scientifically suggests that people who identify as bi or bi plus, which can include terms like pansexual or omnisexual, we're the largest contingent of the LGBTQ plus community, and yet we also tend to least likely to be out to friends and family, and many tend to pass as either straight or gay because it's easier for them socially in many ways, and bi men in particular are largely invisible in the community, and there's a lot of generational shift that's happening now about that, which is great. But I'm 56, or will be in June, so I didn't grow up with any examples of bi male representation in the media, you know, with the possible fleeting exceptions, depending on whether they were in or out that week, of like David Bowie, right? You know, Michael Stipe. You know, people just didn't talk about it, and so I try to be really conscious of that, and I try to be aware of what it would have meant for me at age 9, 10, 11, 12, when I was first starting to figure out this is who I was, to have had those representations in media, in politics, just even in my community, because they were there. They just weren't out and proud. So that's part of why I try to, you know, not hide from it. When I first came out, I don't know if the cameras can pick up this tattoo, but when I first came out widely and publicly about 11 years ago, 2014, I forced myself to get this tattoo, which is a bi pride symbol, very popular in Europe. And I did it because I knew that it would provoke conversations, right? Whether I was sitting at a bar or at a beach or wherever, whoever I was with, anytime it wasn't winter and I wasn't covered up, someone was almost always going to ask, "Oh, I like your tattoo. What is it?" And I would have to make that choice in that split second, which I know lots of queer people are familiar with, like, do I come out to this person right now in this context, or to this group of people? Am I safe to do that? So that was a little force function for me, and I'm glad to say it's pretty much worked. And I think that, you know, that's a large part of why I got involved with a pride organization too. I think it's because I think it's really important for us to, especially now, put ourselves out there, right? It's all up to us as individuals, but for those who feel comfortable, right, being out and proud, the difference it can make for others is unfathomable, life-changing potentially.
Yeah, and I've already had such a big response to all the events and the queer gatherings that have been happening in North Shore, especially in the last few years.
Yeah.
And you said you moved here 4 years ago.
2021, April of 2021. Yeah, and so we were, you know, pandemic refugees. I quit a job during the pandemic that I wasn't enjoying anymore and thought, life's too short, look at what's happening to the world. And my wife found out that she was going to be able to go pretty much full remote. And so we'd always loved Gloucester and the North Shore and Cape Ann especially, and wanted to be close to water. I grew up around water, and so that was that. But one of our major concerns, Casey, was actually we had spent, you know, the prior 10 years or so close to Boston, building really strong ties in the queer community there. I was very active with a group called Speak Out, which is the nation's oldest group of LGBTQ+ speakers. And I was on their board for about 9 years. I was a volunteer speaker for them for that same period of time. I still am. And I also got very involved with the Bisexual Resource Center in Boston and started hosting a monthly Bi Guys you know, support social night. And so we had a great community of both queer and straight friends. And I, in particular, was really nervous about, okay, we're going to Cape Ann. What's going to happen to that? And there was a sense of loss at first. And then I realized, like, if I just looked around a little bit more, no, there were no queer bars, right? Officially, right? Not even on the North Shore at that time, and certainly not on Cape Ann. But if you knew where to look, and of course we all know how to
spot us,
how to clock each other, right?
The tattoo.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi is strong, right?
Yeah.
And so I began to develop a small circle of queer friends and allies. And then we were just, about 5 of us were sitting around one day. This was actually May of 2023. And so it was coming up on Pride Month of 2023. And we were talking, you know, well, what are you doing for Pride? Where are you going? Of course, we're all saying, oh, you know, we'll go to North Shore Pride again. It's always fun in Salem. And, you know, who was going to Boston, who was going to Provincetown, who was going to Providence, was anyone going to New York? And it just kind of dawned on us, like, well, why isn't there a Cape Ann Pride? Like, how come this hasn't happened? And so, you know, somewhat jokingly, we sort of raised glasses, and we were at Pratty's, of all places, and we founded sort of the community side, the grassroots side of what would become Cape Ann Pride. Lo and behold, and I should say, with all due credit, two of the people who were there that day had already been convening sort of discussion meetings around issues of intersectional justice and racism and anti-homophobia, anti-LGBTQ stuff taking place on Cape Ann. So they had already been sort of sowing the seeds for this for more than a year prior to that. And then we found out that the Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, fantastic group, had gotten so much input from their business members, chamber members, saying, why isn't there a Cape Ann Pride? You know, we should do something. Obviously, this brings in money and brings in tourism, and more importantly, we want to show businesses, employers, employees, visitors that this is a safe, welcoming, celebratory community. And we want to put that sort of face forward. So to the Chamber's great credit, and this is like, I love this story because this so rarely happens in the nonprofit sector, instead of saying, no, this is ours, we're already doing it, they said, well, why don't you come on in and come into our discussion meetings and our idea meetings? And before we knew it, we had come together as a group. And so now the Chamber is the Cape Ann Pride Coalition's official co-founding and co-organizing sponsor of Cape Ann Pride Weekend. We do other things sort of separately from the weekend that they are less involved with, but a member from the Chamber is always going to have a seat on our board as liaison. And as far as we know, there's no other model like that we've heard of or learned about in the country. When I tell this story to people who are well-versed in Pride organizations and nonprofits and community work and working with chambers of commerce, they're like, wait, what? So that was great, and I think that's been part of the magic. Why last year was such a success. As we like to say, we brought the Chamber authenticity, and they brought us legitimacy in terms of the eyes of the business community, which was a perfect combination. Yeah.
And so looking into Pride this season,
Yeah.
Survive and Thrive.
Survive and Thrive. This is our new shirt. Yeah. We're not exactly sure when they'll be available for the public.
I'll take 10.
Purchase. You'll take
Every
10.
color.
Okay. We're probably going to be selling them at $20, maybe $25. Haven't totally decided yet. Got to look at the budget. Got to see how many more sponsorships come in.
I feel like everyone wants a shirt, though. Whenever you
Everyone
come
wants a
to an
shirt.
event or
Yeah.
an outdoor fair or something, they're like,
Absolutely.
get the shirt.
And people pay $40 for a shirt at a concert.
Yes.
So, and these are good quality. So, yeah, we love the design. The design was done for us by the great folks at Seaside Graphics, based on an earlier draft done by a friend of ours here in town. We wanted something more than just a date on this year's shirts to really honor the moment that we're in. I at first was kind of against the survive part. I was thinking like, what's wrong with just thrive in 25?
Yes.
And then people, including my wife, pushed back rightly and said, no, let's not skirt away from this. These are really scary times, especially for trans, non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid people, and especially children and their families. And so it is literally a question of survival now, depending on where you live in this country. And even potentially here in supposed deep blue Massachusetts. So they were right to push back and say, yeah, survive has to be in there and thrive. And so yeah, you can always add on the rhyme, survive and thrive in 25. But I was persuaded that thrive in 25 sounded a little too Oprah, like new year, new you, new body, you know. But so yeah, we'll be selling these probably at the last night of our upcoming Film Fest next week, which ends on Friday, May 2nd, with a secret screening of a film that is a queer cult classic. We can't say the name because of licensing contract issues, but if you listen carefully, we do urge everyone to head out that night in their best wigs.
Love a wig.
Through this wicked little town and maybe listen to some midnight radio after the film that we will be screening, whose name we cannot say. Yeah. So t-shirts, last year's shirts will definitely be on sale all Tuesday through Friday of the film festival, and then the new ones maybe on Friday, and then certainly these shirts will be on sale all through all of our events on Pride Weekend.
And then if you could give us a little highlight reel of the Pride event.
Sure. So we just got confirmation yesterday that on Thursday of the weekend, the City of Gloucester will be doing another Pride flag raising, Progress Pride flag raising, and issue the typical proclamation honoring Pride, Cape Ann Pride Weekend. And that'll be at 5 o'clock on that Thursday. And then we go right to the kickoff party, and that's at City Hall in Gloucester. And then we go right to the kickoff party at Drift, just down the street in Gloucester. So once again, it's out by the ocean at Drift, and that's from 6 to 10. No charge. That's open to the public. We'll just have fun music, decorations, lots of flags, a lot of little giveaways. We'll be selling t-shirts. We'll be taking donations. And they're going to have a specialty Pride Weekend drink that they'll donate 50% of the proceeds from that to Pride. So that's Thursday night, Thursday the 29th of May. Friday night, we're so happy that The Beauport Hotel is inviting us back for another one of their Sunset Sessions fundraisers. Don't know the exact time on that or the ticket price, but again, this will all be at capeannpride.org very soon. So that's Friday night, and that was a great party on their rooftop deck. For those of you who are in the area, have you been up there yet, Casey?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
We actually, after me and my husband got married last year, we went to the Beauport Hotel and went up there. Yeah.
You snuck up there?
We did.
Okay, because typically it's reserved only for guests.
Yes.
So one of the great things about these Sunset Sessions is it's like a way in, you know. Last year the weather was beyond perfect. We realized we're running a risk, you know, this early in June, but hopefully the gods will smile on us again. So that's Friday night. Saturday night, and Friday there's going to be a flag raising in Essex at the Essex Senior Center, I believe at 9:30 Friday morning. And then Saturday we're going to do Cape Ann Families Bowl with Pride at Cape Ann Lanes in Gloucester, 12 to 5. Exact details about reservations and costs still TBD, but that was a big hit with families and younger kids last year. Saturday night, if all goes well and it looks like the stars are aligning, we will bring queer karaoke for the first time ever that we know of to Cape Ann at Harbor 9 in Gloucester Crossing. And hopefully, we're very close to nailing down a drag king host who will keep the crowd revved up, do a couple numbers themselves, and just have a great night. And doors open for that at 9. Tickets for that will be on Harbor 9's website, but again, you can link through from ours. And then Sunday, the big cap-off is our Pride on the Pier tea dance, again at Maritime Gloucester from 2 to 7. Yeah, and we'll have DJ Billy Solomon there spinning the tunes again.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fun last year. Did you go? No, you had a gig.
Yes, or my school has all our events and final concerts.
Yeah,
that weekend.
Yeah. Logan was there. He had fun.
Yes. Yes. And I didn't realize. So I just talked to him about it like a few weeks ago. He's the treasurer.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Logan's our treasurer. So right. So full disclosure. Right. This is a little inside baseball here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
we're a friend of the cast. Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing. So then I always talk about like generic why Pride is important to small towns, like in the North Shore and in Cape Ann especially. You kind of mentioned it. It's just a way for us to build community, maybe because the Boston Pride, like you said, went away for a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe post-pandemic.
Right.
Often I always hear people talking about they just don't want to drive places.
Yes. Well, the Cape Ann factor of, that's over the bridge, that's so far.
It's a thing here for some reason. And
yeah.
I'm from out west and it's not a thing.
No, not a thing.
Yeah.
No, you think nothing of driving 6 hours and back in a day. That's a day trip, right? So whereas driving here from Gloucester, I felt like, I gotta go all the way to Ipswich. Are you kidding me? So I think with the temporary implosion of Boston Pride and then the rebirth, thankfully, of Boston Pride for the people, that did create a vacuum. And then there was the impact of the pandemic where things were just not happening and shut down for a couple of years. And even when they came back, everyone's feelings and attitudes about going to big cities and being in huge crowds had understandably changed, probably forever to some degree. And the plus side of that was that a lot of these other smaller towns and communities, the regional prides did start cropping up. And now there had been some that had been around for a while. North Shore Pride has been in existence for 12 or 13 years. And most of their programming has been focused in Salem and Beverly because that's where the bulk of their population is on the North Shore, and so that's great. And then there's groups like Newburyport Pride, which got started at the exact same time than we did. So this is their second year as well. And coincidentally, we happen to have the same weekend as them, but it has not been a competition at all. We've been very collaborative and are thinking of ways, to do events year-round with each other, to try to do more things in Ipswich and Newburyport together. Maybe do some joint events, on our Pride weekends in years to come. So there was this great energy, that's out there with all these groups saying, well, we can at least do our own picnic. And, we don't have a parade, right? We don't have a festival. We decided to do a more dispersed model. We might someday have a parade or a festival. We might not. Not every Pride has to look the same, but it's important that each community, I think, figure out for itself, like, what fits, right? And what fits our culture here? What do people want to support and get involved with? When I was out flyering last year for the first time, putting up the flyers of our weekends event, I was just astounded at the warmth of the reception we got. And then that was even more this year. I put up over 150 flyers in the various Cape Ann towns for our April 10th fundraiser. And it was just this mixture of like joy and relief and gratitude that we were coming back, that we had made it. So many people, all these workers and some of the managers and the other employees and owners of these businesses were just so psyched about this. And that fundraiser was great. We still need more help. We've got about a $3,000, $3,500 budget cap right now. We're going to be okay, but we had 80 people in that room at Minglewood on April 10th, which I was astounded by. We basically filled the room, and the mood was great. So that's been fantastic. And because things are always complicated, we've also heard privately from some sponsors who stepped right up last year that they're a little concerned about how visible they want to be in terms of being attached to this year. They're really having to take stock of what the political climate is, depending on what their industry is, what effect that has on their clientele. Because Pride has become so unnecessarily politicized, it should not be a partisan issue. We're talking basic American civil rights, right? Basic human rights, but it has become partisan. There are some prior sponsors who I sense are a little hesitant, are a little skittish, and that's really unfortunate. I can't tell them it's not a scary time, but I am trying to tell them this is exactly why we need you. This is exactly when it matters really to step up and get your logo, get your name on our billboards, on our website. That is important for you to show people that you're great with this, that we do value all kinds of people in our community. Our mission is to advocate, celebrate, bring together, educate about and support LGBTQ people on Cape Ann. There shouldn't be any reason why any organization, business, other nonprofit, whoever, should have any trouble with that. And yet those are the times we live in, that people are fearful. We have had 3 of our members in recent weeks, be the recipient of some pretty ugly remarks when they've been in public wearing a Cape Ann Pride t-shirt.
I'm surprised, yeah.
I am surprised, and I'm not, because that's been normalized, right? So I think, for those of your watchers and listeners who, I'm sure if they're tuning into this, they're already pretty much,
they're on board.
They're an ally, right? Or they're a member of the community. But just in case they're wondering how important it is to speak up, to step out, to step out proudly, visibly, glamorously.
Yes.
Please, this year, bring it. Survive and thrive. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. People need to see it. Kids need to see it,
Yes. Especially kids. And that's what I've noticed from the communities that have been doing keynote speeches at high schools and working with children specifically, because that's what my background is in.
Right.
Families and parents with children who are LGBTQI are the ones that I think get the most out of
They
these.
need it the most.
They need it the most, and they need our voices out there.
Yeah, they're terrified, and they're wondering, what if I get that dream job in Florida or Texas or Tennessee? Can I move my queer child there? Are we going to lose access to life-saving health care if they need gender-affirming care? I mean, that is a threat, and it may soon be a threat nationwide. We have book bans being put forward in New Hampshire. We've had anti-trans bills go forward in New Hampshire. That's next door. There have been incidents in others of the more conservative Massachusetts town, it's even around here, where things at schools being put up by gender sexuality associations have been taken down. So we really, I think, are at a critical point, and I don't ever want to say that the queer community got complacent, because I don't think we did, but I think it's human, or no more so than anyone does, right? But I think it's human nature. When generations of people fight and fight and fight and fight and leave a lot of blood on the mat, right, to secure some rights, it's natural to sort of think, especially in a system like ours, which should be an ongoingly progressive liberal democracy, and I use those terms in their original meaning, right? It's natural to sort of think like, okay, well, whew, right, done. Now we can rest. And I think what we've learned since 2016 in particular, in the queer community, and of course, communities of color could have told us this a long time ago, and our own members who are people of color have been telling us this, which is like, don't take anything for granted, right? Behind every advance is a retrenchment waiting to happen, right? Or a reprisal or a reactionary period. And so progress is not linear, but again, to quote the often quoted, right, the arc of the moral universe it is long, but does bend towards justice. But that bending takes benders,
Yes.
right? Takes work. You can't let up. You have to keep doing it, and I think we've learned that in a hard way since 2016. If you said to people after the marriage equality decision at the Supreme Court, you know, that within a decade or so, that itself would be under serious legal threat, I think historians would have said to you, yeah, that's quite possible. But I think a lot of people didn't want to imagine that, and now it's true. So, yeah.
But thanks to people like you who continue to inspire me, I'm so inspired by the movement that's been happening in the North Shore and Cape Ann.
It's been great.
That is fueling me and motivating me to survive and thrive in 25.
Survive and thrive in 25, baby. That's it. And it has been great. There's been so many more drag shows.
Yes. Oh my goodness. There's so much drag now.
Not a small part in that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And so it is great to see those businesses like Bonefish Harry's, you know, which I think hosted their first drag event.
We're doing another one May 31st. Tickets go on sale in May.
Fantastic. So like that's amazing to see that happening. That Harbor 9, which is a brand new business in Gloucester, it's a video golf bar.
Yes,
right?
I've never been to one until New Year's.
Yeah, it's a video golf bar, and they've hosted a drag show, and they want to do queer karaoke on May 31st.
Yes.
And so like that's just great, you know, that's great. And you know, we've got the kids have us. I think we have each other's backs, you know, and that's how it has to be. What we mostly want, as you say, families, queer families and blended families, to see that we're not leaving them in the lurch. We're not going anywhere. And if actually people go to our website, there's a resources page where, you know, this is not just about partying, as important as that is, right? To be joyful and queer in public, visibly so. That's one of the most powerful things we can do as a community. But we also, at Cape Ann Pride, we want to link people to resources when they are in need, whether that's mental health or legal assistance, whatever it may be. We have a whole list of things on our website, and we try to, you know, target them around this area, but there's also some national resources there too. So we urge people to go check that out if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything else you want to say about Cape Ann Pride, I'm excited for the season.
Yeah.
It's fueling me.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, can't wait for event after event after event.
I am having a hard time. Well, I'll take suggestions. I'm a bass baritone, so if anyone wants to send in suggestions to the cast about what I should sing at karaoke. I used to sing a bit, but I'm a little out of instrument. So I gotta, maybe I need to go Bill Weathers, you know. I don't think I should go too high into the tenor. I'll take.
You've been practicing?
No. I have like a month. Anyway, hopefully everyone else will be a little bit liquored up by then, so I'll be fine. But no, go to capeannpride.org. Please look at our calendar of events. Please check out our film fest at the Cape Ann Community Cinema in Rockport next week. Great nights of fantastic queer cinema, comedies, documentaries. The remake of the classic The Wedding Banquet starring Bowen Yang just came out. Them magazine called it one of the most anticipated queer films of 2025. So we've got it for you in Rockport. And then of course, if you're interested in donating, ordering a t-shirt, or please becoming a sponsor if you're a business owner out there, all that information is at capeannpride.org. And otherwise, just come and have a good time.
Yes. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Yes.
Thanks.
Enjoy yourself, yourself go. Enjoy yourself.